Hi guys, so today I want to talk about looking up, and one of the simplest things that you can do to improve sprint performance, and it's just so simple: look up. So why is looking up so important? Well, think about the time that we spend looking down, okay? Whether it's actually, looking at our phone, we're constantly looking down, whether we're actually thinking about something. So we're constantly looking down on the ground. We're either looking at a phone, looking at something, or we're thinking about something. Because let's face it, looking down on the ground, is that interesting? What's more interesting, looking up or looking down? And the point is, we're not looking down on the ground because we find it interesting. We're actually thinking about something, and we're not here in the present moment. So we're actually constantly thinking, and mostly when we think, constantly think about the negative things. So looking up is one of those things. Just spending your time looking up, looking around, is one of the simplest things that you can do during your training session and actually before a race. Because when you're actually looking up, you're likely to be more present. You're supposed to be out of your mind because you're noticing things around. And also because you actually remember yourself to look up, because we have to do that nowadays because of the habit of looking down. Once we remember to look up, that's us putting ourselves, actually waking up, as it were, and actually getting out of an indication that we're actually here and now, which is one of the biggest things that we can do before a race. We can't constantly be thinking, getting drawn in, because once we get constantly drawn into thinking, we're actually going to be thinking about our nerves, and nerves will take over from us. The constant thinking will actually allow the nerves to get better or get worse, and we get drawn in by the nerves. So when you're actually looking up, it's an indication that we're actually, waking up and not allowing the thought structures actually getting in touch with us. So looking up during a training session, looking up before your race, spending your time noticing in the warm-up, noticing upwards, not spending your time thinking, looking down. Looking down is probably an indication that you're thinking about stuff. We don't need that right now. Thinking is not what you need before a race, before sprinting, before 400 meters. Thinking is the one thing that actually destroys running performance generally. It just is, okay? If you're looking down, you're there because you're actually thinking about something. Looking down is not, on the ground, is not that interesting. So the likelihood is that's what you're doing. So we need to get ourselves looking up. It's the indication that we're actually noticing stuff around us. We're actually putting ourselves in a better mindset to do it, because we've woken up. We're actually concentrating on what's happening now, which is where performance happens. Your mind should be here and now. That's when performance happens. The other thing about it is physically what it does for the body. If you think about the time we're actually looking down, that is ruining our posture. And that's one thing that we've got to understand, is when the constant looking down at our phones, the amount of time we're spending looking down at our phones, it's actually ruining our posture. Head down, our forward head placement is ruining the posture, and which is affecting our strength. It's affecting the activity of our muscles. So we constantly have to remember that. Looking up, your body is more in line. Now, I'm not saying concentrate, there's a difference. There's a small caveat to me. When I'm actually saying looking up, I'm not saying, right, I've got to think about pushing my chest out, shoulders back and stuff like that. No, don't worry about all that. Just put yourself looking up, and the likelihood is that your chest is going to rise automatically. Okay, if you're looking up in any way, we're putting ourselves in the proper alignment for our body to perform. If we're looking down constantly, important muscles like the glutes will be switched off. There's a lot of compensation patterns that happen where there's overworked muscles and underused muscles. That's what compensation is, and compensation leads to injury. So actually looking up and spending time looking up is not only going to improve your relaxation state, it's also going to improve the activity of your muscles, and it's going to prevent injury. You can do it a short experiment, and actually spend a couple of minutes not looking down but looking up and looking around this thing. You test your, let's take your hip flexor flexibility. You do a quad stretch or hip flexor flexibility. If you do that beforehand, and then you spend a little bit of time actually looking up and noticing what's going on around you, just spend your time, don't look down, and a couple of minutes doing that, and then you test your hip flexor flexibility, you'll find that the actual hip flexor flexibility has improved. And if your hip flexor flexibility is improved, the likelihood is that your glutes are switched on more, and it allows your glutes to perform a lot better. And glutes are so important for your actual performance in sprinting. They're needed for forward motion. They're needed for your power and speed, your glutes, and they need to be in prime condition. So what happens when you actually look up, you're actually putting your glutes in a better state to perform for you, and you're increasing flexibility in your hips. So just think about that. Physically, it puts your body in a better state, and not only mentally, it puts your body in a better state. And all you have to do is just to remember to look up and notice things around you. Spend less time looking down. Spend less time looking down. That means putting your phone away and things like that. Remember that, and you've automatically put your body in a better state to perform. It's in a heightened state of performance. A very, very simple thing that you can do, if nothing else. The other things as well, take a few deep breaths as well, which I talk about in the other way. There's many avenues to get yourself avenues into relaxation. There's many ways of doing it, but this is so simple that you cannot ignore it. And this is something, you need simple things that you can do before the race. So I hope that video gives you something simple, a better understanding of why looking up is so important for your posture, both mentally and physically. I'll see you in the next video.